So I'm just going to launch straight into a bit of an introduction about myself. So I'm Laura Roach, I'm the Education Technology Manager at the School of Biosciences in Cardiff University. We became Surpass customers this year, but this isn't my first Surpass conference as I came last year, so it's nice to see some familiar faces. So to give you a bit of an overview, I'm just going to talk about where we were in terms of before we purchased Surpass, why we decided to go down the e-assessment route pretty much from paper, the process we went through of choosing Surpass, and what's next for us. So I apologise for some of you, for most of you, this is going to be preaching to the converted, but I've had a lot of people ask me about the process that we went through. So in 2017, nearly exactly 2 years ago, I walked into the School of Biosciences, having been in Cardiff University for quite a number of years, but never worked in biosciences before. And they sat me down and like, welcome, we're glad to have you here, but we have a question, or more of a statement, and that was, we'd like you to lead a project selecting a new e-assessment platform. We'd like to make a decision by January 2018. Bear in mind, this was September 2017, with a view to converting all of our exams in the academic year 18-19. Is that all right? Now, when you've been in a job for 24 hours, what do? You go, sure, that's fine, of course. So just to give you some additional context, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but I just wanted to say that also at this point, we were having a facility built called eLeaf, which is an e-assessment and e-learning facility. I got in just as the floor plans were being finalised and before they broke ground on the project. So I managed to have a little bit of input on that, which meant we weren't looking at the BYOD route, so just to give you some context. So we now have a lovely 160-seater facility, which is fabulous. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of context. And I apologise for not having photos of it. I don't know why I don't have any photos of it, because it's been my baby, but I don't. So we have a lot of exams. Our incoming first years, we had 465-ish new first years come in last Monday. They do a common first year when they study biosciences. And that's because a lot of them that come in and say, I want to do neurosciences, for example, by the second year, they say, actually, I don't want to do neurosciences, I want to do zoology. So that's why they all do a common first year and they specialise in the second and third years progressively. So they each do 12 exams in the first academic year, which results in us having 5,520 physical exam papers to try and process and store. Never mind all the poor trees that suffer as a result. So our drivers for change, this list is not exhaustive, but this is the main ones for the three stakeholders, was to reduce admin time for the professional services team. We average about 40 hours per exam. Reduce the marking time for the academic staff, and also to provide the students with a better experience. So the rest of 2017 absolutely flew by. We didn't make a huge amount of progress. We were soon in 2018, nowhere near making a decision, but we were working on it. I say we, I mean I am my team. Okay, so 2018, first of all, we had to do a requirements gathering. So we got all different types of staff together and said, what do you need? What do you want? What's preventing you from being innovative? And what currently works that you don't want to lose, and what currently doesn't work? And we asked them to look at 6 key areas, which are probably very common: authoring, assessment setting, question banks, marking and feedback, reporting and analysis, and admin and support. Once we had those requirements, we then prioritised them using the Moscow scale. I don't know if anybody else has heard of this, because I hadn't until we started using it. So you have your must-haves, your should-haves, your could-haves, and your won't-haves. We then basically did some market research and went to the vendors, all the vendors that we could find, and said, here's our criteria, this is what we're looking to do, can you help us? And this took a while. It took a while to collate all the responses and cross-check things and just make sure that we weren't wasting our time, wasting anybody else's time. Eventually, we ended up with 4 vendors that we invited to do demos with us. Surpass, unsurprisingly, question mark on demand, and we were actually using question mark perception on a very sort of small scale within the school at the time. Blackboard, and we invited Blackboard because they provide our virtual learning environment, and Mobius assessment, but they were known as Maple TA at the time. So what happened was with our demonstrations, there was 2 things that came clear very, very quickly. First of all, Blackboard were not suitable for our needs, so that was out. And Mobius assessment was actually put into a different project. So that was out, but it was in on a slightly different project because it was in scope, but just not for what we were looking for this project. We scored our vendors based on how well they met our criteria. We looked for any critical criteria that they didn't meet. And we also looked at what aspects we hadn't really considered before. And there were some very important things that we should have considered before that we didn't, up until the point where the vendors came in and told us what they were capable of providing us. And naturally, we had to think about what was cost effective and also sustainable. We really didn't want to enter into something where maybe in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, we were having to look at a different project because it just wasn't sustainable. Just to add at this point, I didn't make the final decision about who we went with, but one thing that made a huge difference to me was being in Bristol last year. It was fantastic, and I say that because the community, the BTL Surpass community, is amazing. So if you were there last year and we spoke, thank you very much. It really, really helped to cement my belief that Surpass was the right platform for us. It was absolutely brilliant. So last year went super, super quickly, and we came into 2019 and we finally had a decision. And I had to, as I mentioned, go in and say, I think Surpass is the best platform for us. I felt it was a best all-round platform. I used the saying of, for the many, not for the few, because I really felt like everybody could benefit from it. And then we had the go-ahead to start the procurement process nearly 16 months after starting my role in the School of Biosciences. So 16 months as opposed to 3. Last week, we finally ran our trial. So we put 420 brand new students on their second day through Surpass to do a diagnostic quiz. So a diagnostic quiz is an opportunity for the students to find out where they are in their learning post A-level, and for us to see where they are as well. It doesn't count for anything. They just get very general feedback for revision areas, but it was a really good opportunity to get them through eLeaf and get them using Surpass. We used HTML delivery. We didn't need to lock anything down. If they had used a browser or anything to look up the answers, the only person they were disadvantaging were themselves. They were all too terrified to do anything they shouldn't be doing anyway, so it didn't really make any difference. We had 2 errors. We had 2 network errors. One student who, by the time he put his hand up, it had fixed itself. And I had another student who had a network error, and when I looked under the desk, he'd pulled out the network cable with his foot. So I was down on my hands and knees plugging a network cable back in during this quiz, with one of my colleagues giving me a very concerned look of, what on earth are you doing? But it soon became clear what we were doing. The only other factor was human errors. So that was entirely my fault. I overlooked something, so the students weren't able to put in the correct response that they needed to. That was entirely my fault. I take responsibility for it. So, what's next for us? A lot is probably the answer to that. So our first year students are going to be doing the mid-module assessments fairly soon. They do them quite early on in the year. So we are taking across 5 out of 6 of our mid-module assessments. 5 of them are primarily MCQ with a few short answer questions thrown in, not that many. And one of them is an essay exam, so we're not taking that one across. So for the most part, it's going to be human marking with a little bit of mostly computer marking and a little bit of human marking. It's medium to low risk. It's medium risk in that it's the student experience that we're concerned about, but the tests don't actually count for anything for the students at the end. It's not going to count towards their final degree. So our great debate at the moment is, do we move to typed essay questions? There's a huge debate about this. Surprisingly, last week, we asked our new first years, what would you prefer? Like, not in the terms of you get to have a say necessarily, but we wanted to know what their opinion was. And the majority of them said they would prefer to handwrite, which was a huge shock. So we think that the reason is that they're not used to writing for 3 hours. So that's a possibility. So the thing that we're going to do is run some sort of formative opportunity for them to come along and give it a go and get some data from it before we look at this any further. The staff are very much 50-50. The staff who are against typed exams is because they don't want to mark on screen any more than they do. That was my thought as well. And I'm actually really on the fence. I want what's best for the staff and the students. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be taking the exams. I'm not going to be marking them. I want what's best for the stakeholders involved. Just to close, I just want to say a huge thank you to the team at BTL, Emma, Lizzie, Kat, Jen, Will, all the rest of you, Tim. You've just been amazing. Thank you so, so much. Yeah, could not have gotten to this point without you. And also to Brian from NBME as well, who's been a fantastic font of knowledge. So thank you very much, Brian, as well. Thank you very much.